Welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at 5 reasons why your hamstrings aren't growing and what to do about it. Reason number 1 is not prioritizing hamstrings in your workouts. It might seem obvious, but it always surprises me how many people simply don't do this. They start their leg workouts with squats and leg presses and then go into lunges, and then by the time they get to hamstrings, they're all tired and exhausted and only do a couple of mediocre sets of leg curls, and then they hope that they'll grow. John Meadows was a huge proponent of doing hamstrings first in a workout, and that was probably one of the most simplest yet most valuable pieces of information that I took from him in regards to building muscle. So if you haven't tried it yet, start doing leg curls and hamstring work at the start of your leg days. I also often include a separate hamstring or posterior chain day if they're really a lagging body part that I want to build up. Reason number 2 is using your calves too much on leg curl exercises. So when it comes to bending the knee on a leg curl motion, there are 2 major muscle groups that could be contributing here. You have your hamstrings, of course, but then you also have the calves. And the one that'll work the most will depend upon the joint angle at the knee and which muscle is in a better leveraged position to work more effectively to bend the knee. So from a fully locked out knee position to the first maybe 15 or so degrees of knee bend, the calves are the major contributor to knee flexion. It's not until after that the hamstrings are in a better position to work and take over the rest of the movements. So if you often feel your calves or that region at the back of your knee dominating the exercise, it's possibly because you're performing your leg curls in a way that allows them to take over too much. The biggest thing to avoid here is using too much explosiveness to launch out of the bottom of a leg curl, as that will largely be from the calves, and then the resulting momentum that will be generated will take tension away from the hamstrings. A simple fix here is to make sure you're being mindful of keeping a very controlled transition phase out of that stretch position into the next rep. It might also be helpful short term to reduce your range of motion. Start in the leg curl not from a fully extended position, but from a slightly flexed position where the hamstrings are already in their strongest position to work on the knee joint. That should make a big difference if you feel your calves taking over a lot. In a similar theme to reason number 2, reason number 3 is not having any eccentric focus. One of the most common things that I see people doing in the gym is completely disregarding that lowering portion on hamstring exercises like leg curls or Romanian deadlifts. This eccentric or lowering portion is where you have the ability to create a lot more tension in the muscle and to create more improvements to muscle fascicle length than concentric lifting, which is the lifting phase. And this seems to have some sort of benefit to reducing injury risk and improving power output. In plain English, this is not something you want to be avoiding. Apart from telling you to simply make sure you're taking a deliberate 2 to 4 seconds to lower down into the bottom position of each rep, I like to also use Nordic curls as a primary exercise. There are many ways to set this up with body weights, band assistance, or a specific machine, but the big benefit here is that it's hard to cheat this exercise by dropping down without any control on the lowering portion, or you simply won't get yourself back up. If you haven't done these before, they are ridiculously challenging as an exercise, so make sure you go slow and don't overestimate your abilities. Reason number 4 is not doing seated leg curls as an exercise. You can get away with doing lying leg curls or other leg curl variations to stimulate your hamstrings, but when it comes to being able to push your body to its absolute limits, nothing will beat a good seated leg curl exercise for the amount of stability you can create as you push yourself close to those fatigue points. You simply can't do that on a lying leg curl or a kneeling leg curl without your hips raising up and using a lot more momentum. But because of how firmly you're squished into the seat on a seated leg curl, it's very hard to cheat. Also, the position that you're in on a seated leg curl trains the hamstrings from more of their lengthened to mid-range positions where you have a lot more strength. Reason number 5 is doing squats or leg presses for hamstrings. This is a pretty big misconception that I'm surprised still exists, but when you do any press motion where you're bending the knee and your hip joints, your hamstrings are under very little stress whatsoever and won't get much of a meaningful stimulation. For a muscle to receive a stimulus, it has to go through a significant range of motion whilst working against the load that you're using. Because your hamstrings cross both the knee and the hip joints, when you bend your knees and your hips at the same time, in say a squat motion, the knee bend shortens the hamstring, whilst the bend in the hip into hip flexion lengthens the hamstrings. And the net result is hamstring length doesn't change much whatsoever. So no matter how awkwardly you might try to position your feet or squeeze or contract your hamstrings, they're not doing much. They definitely are working statically and do play some sort of stability or assistance role around the hip joints, but this won't be enough of any real stimulation for growth long term, unless you're an absolute beginner or are doing a ridiculous amount of sets well beyond failure. While you might be able to feel more by doing these kinds of weird things, don't confuse sensation here for stimulation. Alright, that's it for today guys. Hope you enjoyed this video and learned something useful. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because small actions like that go a very long way to helping this channel reach more people and help to allow me to continue to create more free content just like this. If you want to be a superstar supporter of the channel, don't forget to check out my programs, macro calculator, clothing and accessories using the links in the description below, and I'll see you all next time.